Hello and welcome to Founder Friday. We are so happy to be back with you again for another episode of talking about things that our customers ask about here at Azure. And David, we've had a number of customers who have asked us through the years, but pretty regularly about ingredients, artificial colors, what's banned here at Azure. And one of the things that we've been seeing really out um, on social media, just in the world in general lately, is more and more of this awareness of what's in our food. We're seeing viral videos around comparisons between packaged foods in the UK versus packaged foods in the US, and people are waking up to how unhealthy the packaged foods in our country are. And I know it's a narrative and it's a message, I should say, that we've been putting out for a very, very long time. And we have very strong standards surrounding and you've built these standards surrounding ingredients in the foods that we carry. And so today, what we'd really like to talk about is those things, controversial foods, banned foods, especially the banned foods, uh, according to our standards here at Azure. So that's what we're going to start with today. So let's talk about the controversial foods first, and just some things that we've seen from customers around maltodextrin and dextrose, or seed oils, canola oils, things like that. And we'll start with those.
All right. So in a couple of cases like that, Azure may have been just a little bit slow at getting rid of a few things. Maltodextrin is one of those. Truthfully, I didn't even realize that we had it in some of our products. They will be gone. Um, that's um, that's my pledge. As soon as we can, we will drop those items. Um, because I am not in favor of maltodextrin at all. Um, when we get to the seed oils, I have I have a little bit different thought process with that. I do know that there's a lot of bad rap going on about seed oils right now. Most of it, some of it is exaggerated, some of it is true. We haven't used, you know, we haven't used much in the way of seed oils at our house in a long, long time, with a couple of major exceptions. One being flax oil. I'm a big fan of flax oil, flax seed oil. It is a seed oil, very high in omega 3s. We use it regularly in our house. So seed oils just saying seed oils in a very general way, I don't, I don't really quite agree with that. On the other hand, back when Azure was young, back in the 90s, uh, I can't tell you how many times I got asked this exact question because the media was all over coconut oil at that time and palm oils. So at that time, I got asked the exact same question. How come you don't ban coconut oil? Because it's such an unhealthy oil. Well, the problem here is not necessarily that coconut oil is unhealthy. Coconut oil now has been found to be a very healthy oil. And I agree. I have always felt like coconut was a healthy oil. Um, the problem is that there is in the media, there is a fight going on between the Tropical Oil Coalition and the Domestic Oil Coalition. So because here domestically, talking about the U.S. and Canada, we produce primarily vegetable and seed oils. Now, when you get to vegetable oils, like, and usually that's corn oil a lot of times, or cottonseed oil, or something like that. Those Azure, doesn't carry. We don't have anything with anything, any of those like vegetable oils in that sense. But when we're talking about seed oils, um, I feel like there's this fight going on between, an information fight going on between the import coalition and the domestic coalition. And for a while, the domestic had the upper hand. They were making people think that coconut oil and palm oils were poisonous. Now the imported oil coalition has the upper hand, and they're trying to make everyone think that domestic oils and seed oils are absolutely poisonous. My viewpoint is that there is a use for both. Now, the use for um, seed oils, you know, flaxseed oil, raw flaxseed oil, in my opinion, is very healthy. I think we should all use a certain amount. We use that in a lot of our salad dressings on popcorn and things like that. Um, when we get to other seed oils, particularly sunflower seeds, safflower, seed oil, and probably canola oil would fit into that category. And canola oil, I would not use in my house. We don't usually pick up new products, and we certainly don't allow anything in that's not organic in the way of canola oil. But canola oil, you know, I there may be uses for it, but non-food uses as much as possible. It's a great lubricant. We actually use it sometimes to lubricate food type equipment, things like that. But I'm not a big fan of eating canola oil. When we're talking about safflower and sunflower oil, the when you're doing high heat or relatively high heat, if it's fried, if it's deep fried, if it's anything like that, I think that they're just as good, if not better, than the non-seed oils. Now, you know, because they are more highly refined, but because of their high refinement, they can take heat better, especially high heat. So if you're eating potato chips, hey, uh, if you have a junk food tooth, um, they're better than a lot of things you can eat. But they are going to be basically a fried food. And having a seed oil on something like that is not going to be much different than if you had, avocado oil or something like that. Azure has Azure has allowed we have allowed those items in Azure. Typically, hey, in our house, we move towards the cleaner foods. You know, do we ever eat potato chips? Oh, yeah, a couple times a year for a picnic or something, we might use potato chips. It's not a part of our diet. And of course, if we did use potato chip, they would certainly be organic ones. Um, but that's but Azure does carry all of the other oils, and I am a big fan of particularly the oils that um, are ancient, like olive oil. In my house, olive oil is our go-to because we've been using olive oil for untold thousands of years, pretty much the same way that we use it today. And it can take a fair amount of heat. You don't want to deep fry in it, but it can take some heat, and it's going to be, assuming that you're actually getting good olive oil. Now there are diluted olive oils, so be careful. But anything Azure carries, um, we are very careful that it's the best, and that's my favorite oil. But why don't we ban seed oils? Because I feel like number one, it's a little bit of a fad, and I think a lot of the media is part of that fight that's going on between the import and the domestic oils. And I want to we want to supply the very best seed oils. And hey, if I go to a sunflower seed, I can squish a sunflower seed in my fingers and get oil out of the sunflower seed in my fingers, just like you can with an olive. Those, you know, is a lot of it super refined? Yes, it is. But can you get a relatively unrefined sunflower oil just like you can an olive oil or a coconut oil? Yes, you can. And so right now we are leaving that up, up to our customers to choose the oil that's best for them. And I think these seed oils can be a step in the right direction in certain cases, and hence, so far, have not put those on the restricted or banned ingredient list.
So it sounds like, really what you're saying and is that um, we give customers the option as really looking at where they are in their journey, right? Everybody starts somewhere in their journey, and some people are coming in brand new and they're just learning. And so we want to give them a higher quality option to choose from and give them the opportunity to choose and then grow and educate and then learn the appropriate uses for the different types of, in this case, oils or products that they're choosing. Would that be kind of a fair assessment? Like, would giving you an opportunity to make that decision for yourself, but we're providing you the very, very best, um,
Very,
of that
very,
product.
the very, very best in sunflower and safflower oil, if you're talking about seed oils, but the very best in oils. We offer the very best avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, all of those that are very low refined oils. We even have coconut oil that's completely raw as an option. And it tastes a little more coconutty, yes. But, if you want to use something really clean, those are here. Completely raw coconut oil. Olive oil is essentially raw. Pretty much all of the extra virgin olive oils are raw. You know, you're you can just go you can eat that stuff. It's super healthy and it's not going to cause any damage whatsoever, and not even controversially um, from anyone who has any kind of credibility.
Well, I think that is absolutely where we need to be and what we hear from customers. So thank you for addressing that around the seed oils, around the controversial ingredients that we hear about. Now I'd like to really move us into the core of where we stand on the ingredients that we ban. And we have a long list, and I know we're adding more to that list on on the ingredients that we just absolutely will not allow into Azure. And so, David, let's talk a bit about things like artificial flavors, um, artificial colors, preservatives, things like that, and why we have what we have on our list of banned ingredients and how we look at those and make sure that every product that we have is meeting those standards that we really hold to.
All right. Yeah. So I guess we can start with the artificial flavor world. That's the one that's actually probably the hardest. And um, Azure here, we have in in effect have never carried any products with those big four that you mentioned: the artificial flavors, artificial colors, artificial preservatives, and artificial sweeteners. Those big four, Azure has never, you know, um, allowed any of the products here to have them in. And then we found out, for instance, with the artificial flavors, that there are some natural flavors that are really artificial flavors that um, that can be labeled natural flavors, but they're really not. And natural flavor, artificial flavors. The FDA has roughly 200 artificial flavors that are what's called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. So you can basically, as a food manufacturer, you can put those roughly 200 artificial flavors into any of your food products with impunity. They're generally recognized as safe. You don't have to file for any extra permits. There's nothing to it. Just put them in. Nobody cares as far as from an FDA perspective or a food safety perspective. Now, Azure strongly disagrees with that. I strongly disagree with that. We strongly disagree with that. Those flavors are not meant to be eaten. Now, there's also roughly 500 generally recognized as safe flavors that can be added that are called natural flavors. Now, natural flavors may or may not be completely natural, unfortunately. And so Azure has taken great pains to try to differentiate in the natural flavors world. So if something has, and we don't carry these in and of themselves, but there's products that we carry or we distribute with other people's labels on it. We don't typically put any of that in our labels. But when we get a product in and it has natural flavors as one of the ingredients, well, that could mean that could be artificial flavor or natural flavor, or what I would consider artificial flavors, because it's not actually the product that you're tasting. So the big differentiator in my book is that a natural flavor is the essence or the part that you're actually flavored. So for instance, if you have a peppermint flavor and that flavor is being caused by peppermint oil or the extract of peppermint, the real distilled essential oil of peppermint, that's a natural flavor. That's the naturally occurring flavor of peppermint that you're putting into, whatever it is, your candy or your, tea or whatever. That's a natural flavor. If it is a synthetic, if it's something that makes you think that you're tasting something that you're not, that is where, you know, um, you get into the artificial side. Now, and natural flavors can fall in that category when under the label. So Azure's taken great pains to make sure that the natural flavors that we do have in new products are not technically artificial flavors, labeled as natural flavors.
Right. And David, if I can interrupt for just a moment, I was thinking about a story when I first came to Azure and we were talking about uh, just how purposeful we are in the approach of looking at the ingredients and products. I recall sitting in a new product meeting, and we had brought on a brand, and I'm not going to disclose the brand name, but we had brought on a brand, and it was a shelf-stable creamer. And one of the creamers was a French vanilla creamer. And I recall that they had natural flavoring or natural flavor as an ingredient on that particular product. And one of the things that impressed me so much, and being just so new here at Azure at that point in time, was that when we were bringing that product on, we said to the vendor, we'll bring on these items here that are very clear, but you need to disclose what that natural flavor is in your product. And I recall they came back and they said, well, it's proprietary. We're not going to be able to tell you that because we're guarding it. And we said, well, okay, then these two products are coming on board. That one will not unless you tell us exactly what that natural flavor is made of. And they came, and we won't disclose it out to the public because it is proprietary, but you have to at least tell us so that we can feel good that we're putting it out to our customers and know that it's something we would approve. And I recall that they came back and they said, okay, we'll tell you. And we ended up bringing that product on because they did end up disclosing it to us. But that just really impressed me because we know that natural flavors are made up of a cocktail of chemicals or can be made up of a cocktail of different chemicals. And we want to make sure that if it says natural flavor, that it is absolutely something that we agree with in the ingredients, and it's not some emulsifiers or flavor enhancers or preservatives that we absolutely will not allow, and it's hidden behind the name natural flavors. And so I would just wanted to tell that story and tell you that, I was really impressed by that. And I know that, having been here now almost 9 years, that we hold true to that all this time later and continue to require that of our vendors. And so, it's very impressive that we hold fast to that, and we hope that our customers are able to trust that even if it says natural flavors and we aren't able to disclose it, that we are doing the work, excuse me, in the background, and digging in and making sure it's suitable. And it absolutely is what we would want to put in front of our customers. We would want to have, we'd be okay with or not okay, but we would be willing to ingest that ourselves.
Yeah, and again, it could be something as benign or as maybe even good for you as peppermint oil hidden in there, or it could even be a more natural derivative of MSG. And and it could be labeled natural flavors. So we have to be really careful on that. And so that's part of the territory. But when we get into artificial flavors, um, you know, they are all over the board. It's a basic, it's basically a toxic soup, and it includes absolute known poisons like diacetyl or something like that, diacetyl, which is the butter flavor that is used probably in every popcorn stand in America, um, um, except a few that really care about organics. Um, but that stuff, is absolute poison, and they know it's poison. Causes birth defects, causes um, asthmatic symptoms in children. It's horrible stuff, and it's not even really controversy about the poison that's in that kind of thing. And that's labeled as butter flavor, for instance. And it's just an artificial flavor. It's made out of petroleum product. But other that one and other artificial flavors, definitely known to inhibit digestion. That messes with the microbiome, causes hyperactivity in children, is um, very, and this is a big thing about artificial flavors. Their artificial flavors many of them can be addicting. And you think, oh, well, only drugs can be addicting. Unfortunately, there are artificial flavors that are actually designed to be addicting so that you come back for that flavor over and over again, even if it's not that good a flavor. But people, you know, have to have that um, because there is actually what's called an excitotoxin addiction for that flavor. And then, of course, you know, um, the fun part about flavors are our real food is flavorful, especially if we use things like healthy spices. Spices can make food wonderfully flavored, and nature, the way God made food, it's flavorful. It is, you know, beautifully flavorful. The only reason that they have to put artificial flavors in food is because they're feeding you crappy food that doesn't have any flavor. It's denatured, crappy food. If it was good food, it wouldn't need it. Or they're trying to addict, especially young children, to these particular flavors. As I say, many of them being addictive. Um, MSG is a big, you know, excitotoxin, one of the big ones. MSG, restaurants that want to feed you crappy food use it all the time. The Chinese food restaurants use MSG all the time, very commonly. I shouldn't say everyone. There may be exceptions that I'm not aware of. But the vast majority of them are using MSG because they're using cheap ingredients. They're using flavorless vegetables that weren't picked at the prime. They're using flavorless noodles. You can make that. You can make Chinese food type, stir fries and noodles and vegetables and those kinds of things very flavorful in real life. Another big user of MSG, and this is just one of the artificial flavors, maybe tried to pick on, but pizza, the Pizza Huts use it incessantly. I was at a warehouse not that long ago, and there was a pizza company there picking up a pallet of 50-pound bags of MSG to use in their pizzas. And the thing is, pizza itself, if you are using good quality ingredients, is a pretty healthy food. So here I say, oh, don't eat pizza. It's loaded with garbage, MSG. Well, that's not actually 100% true. You can put, tomato sauce and vegetables on a sourdough crust and, with some cheese and maybe a little bit of beef or meat and, you know, and make wonderful, healthy pizza. Absolutely nothing wrong with, you know, that as a food. But because they want to make it cheaper, cheaper, cheaper to increase, profits at the Pizza Hut or sorry, Pizza Hut places, they're they're because they want to sell you crappy food, they have to put artificial flavors in to um, to do that. So sorry, that's a little rant. Um, I just want to make sure that you understand Azure is very, very picky about artificial flavors of any sort, and even natural flavors that are really artificial flavors,
Yeah.
because we don't want you to have to your liver and kidneys have to deal with that toxic soup. There's
Well, and I
plenty of
appreciate that you
things.
did that rant, David, because I did not know that about pizza and how heavily MSG was used. I think of Chinese food, as you mentioned, those types of dishes having a lot of traditionally having a lot of MSG. I know there are some restaurants who are moving away from that and have been, but the majority of that has been heavy MSG use, as you mentioned, but I absolutely was not aware of the pizza side of it. So that has me rethinking when we go out to eat. We try to pick places if we're going to go out to eat where there may be less of a chance we're going to encounter those kinds of things. And now, well, let's take a
Well, there,
pizza off the
you
list,
know, no,
unless
I
it's going to
think
go to an organic place. And I'm sure there's some places that
there
don't use
there
it.
there are some places that absolutely make good pizzas from scratch, even at restaurants. There is one in Hood River that doesn't use MSG. Um, but yeah, so there's a few restaurants around, but if you're just standard um, pizza delivered to your door kind of thing, yeah, not so much.
Yeah, some of those names
Um,
out there. So that's artificial flavors. Let's talk,
so
preservatives and colors.
okay, we'll go on to colors. Artificial colors. There are 9 artificial colors that are typically used, or combinations thereof, to create all the various colors. They're very bright colors, um, and those 9, FDA, again, they're generally recognized as safe, which is absolute bullcrap. That's um, I don't know why FDA says that, um, but they are not safe in any sense of the word. Absolutely not. Most European countries have banned them, um, but for some reason in the US, they're perfectly safe.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that they're banned in the UK, but we consider them to be safe.
Yeah, so you mentioned, hey, Cheerios in the UK are a lot more dull in color than Cheerios in the US. Not that Cheerios should be eaten anyway,
I
but
think Fruit Loops.
it
Is
was
that the
Fruit
one we were
Loops.
talking
Yeah,
about?
I
Yeah.
think it was Fruit Loops,
Yeah.
not Cheerios. Yeah, Fruit Loops. Not that you should eat them anyway. In the UK or the US, there's better food. Trust me. But the colors that are used in the US are these artificial colors. In the UK, they actually have to use a natural counterpart. Most the natural counterpart colors are there's nothing wrong with. They're absolute food ingredients. So you're talking about something like powdered beet juice or turmeric or maybe walnut hulls if you get completely down to the outside the food, but most of them would even be somewhat healthy. Nothing, hey, beetroot powder, I can't think of any bad reason, anything bad about beetroot powder. It's something, it's perfectly fine. If you want to make pink out of beetroot powder for, your cake or whatever it is, great idea. And Azure does, we do sell a few of those natural um, colors, but those big nine artificial ones that are used in the US, I don't know. I mean, every one of them has a story. Um, red, you know, proven without a doubt to cause leukemia and cancer in kids. Yellow, it's an excipient of coal tar that is so toxic the EPA had to do huge land removals for the exact same coal tar that they make yellow food coloring out of. I don't know. It's absolutely toxic soup and so toxic that most other nations have even banned that. But it's number one. These food colors, especially red, causes thyroid dysfunction very, very quickly. Thyroid dysfunction is the number one cause of obesity. Um, maybe not the number one cause. It's all caused by diet. Um, but thyroid dysfunction is a very big player in that. Um, and a lot of that's caused by diet as well. Thyroid dysfunction is caused by lack of nutrients and improper diet, including things like these colorings and not getting enough natural nutrients. Um,
And David,
and
I think
then,
about all of the, I think about all of the colored flavored drink mixes that, we give to our children from the time they're little, once they um, are off of mom's milk, we start giving them Kool-Aid and things like that. And it's just full of
and why would we
all
even
those
color that
dyes.
stuff? The caramel colors, the yellows, the greens. Yeah, but number one, yeah, absolutely. Thyroid dysfunction, which includes obesity, hyperactivity in kids, skin issues, um, which leads people to selling more skin medicine. Kidney and liver damage is the big one. I mean, um, just in my lifetime, if you heard about somebody having fatty liver or liver dysfunction, it had to be an alcoholic that was at least 60 years old before liver dysfunction set in. That was the only people that ever had fatty livers and liver dysfunction. Now we're seeing it in young people, in kids. They're having to get liver transplants as young people because their livers are being trashed. Well, when you're talking about these kinds of products, that the liver it takes the brunt of it. And that's not even talking, and this is in addition to, prescription medications and things like that that also put an extreme stress on the liver and the kidneys too for that matter. But why would we want to put just for a little bit prettier Kool-Aid or Fruit Loop? We want to put that kind of stress on our livers. But anyway, so Azure has banned those from the very beginning. Those nine food colors. It's just toxic, and it's really not even very controversially toxic. It's just flat toxic, and we shouldn't. We really shouldn't have that. Um, and as I said, the alternative is actually good for you. There's the beetroot, the turmeric, the charcoal, all those kinds of things that can be used to make those paler colors, um, are healthy alternatives, I guess I should say.
So I guess, do we need the bright, shiny colors and, or,
Yeah,
what, I don't know what drives us. Are we that yeah, go ahead.
are we that tied to the bright and shiny colors, or can we take just a little bit more faded colors? Because we can make all the same colors out of healthy ingredients, but they're not quite as glossy and shiny. But man, are we really willing to destroy our liver for that, as well as thyroid? Those are the two big ones that take the hit there. Um, Artificial preservatives, and there's actually dozens of those that are used in food. Not as many as flavorings, a couple hundred, maybe a couple dozen in the way of artificial preservatives. And again, artificial preservatives are just, um, put in food because they want it to last longer. And how long do you want your food to last? The trouble is, our bodies, when we eat our food, our body digests the food by breaking it down. Artificial preservatives inhibit the breakdown of food. I, the logic of using that in food just absolutely escapes me. Why would we put in our food something to stop it from breaking down, and then we eat that, and in order for us to digest it, it has to break down? It just makes absolutely no sense to me. But that's exactly what's happening. It's just basically um, to create a longer shelf life so they can sell you old stuff, and they can put a longer date on it. It's that simple. Now, there are a few preservatives that, um, particularly in, like lotions and soaps, not things that you would eat that don't break down, but, that don't appear to have any real damaging effect. And Azure does allow a few, preservatives, but primarily we're very, very careful about those preservatives. But there are a couple of preservatives that we do allow in externally used products like soap. Um, we don't really want the oils to go rancid in soap, especially if you're using, um, those kinds of soaps. But, um, you know, and again, Azure is trying to work, above that. We're just right now launching a line of Castile soaps, which are oil-based soaps that absolutely have no preservatives in it. And we're very happy that we're able to do that because most of it does. And we
Yes.
were able to come up with a line that doesn't need any preservatives. And we're very happy on the external side. But on the internal side, preservatives, again, horrible for the liver, extreme liver damage, neurotoxic effects. So who wants that? It affect our nervous system and our brain. I don't know. Asthma, hormone disruption, heart disease, and DNA damage, um, of birth defects, and of course tumors and cancer. That's just what we're dealing with in order to have, um, our food last just a little bit longer, so that it can stay, on the shelf longer. And and obviously we can't digest it very well because it's preserved. I, you know, but all those side effects definitely come into play when we're talking about those products. So there are a couple of natural things that we can use to preserve food if we want that will break down. Um, some to preserve color, for instance, if you're making jams or something using lemon juice instead of some kind of preservative to preserve the color, it's not going to keep it from breaking down. You're still canning it, which preserves it in that state until it actually, until it's opened. And then, of course, because it's just removing all the oxygen. So canning is a very safe way to preserve food, as is drying. And then salt can preserve food as well. We don't want to over be extremely in excess on salt, but salt is something that our body can handle in a healthy way, for the most part, especially if we're using the naturally occurring, what I call colloidal salts that were originally from seawater or in a liquid state. Um, Salts are a pretty good way to preserve, like, i.e., things like salt meats, or sauerkrauts, adding a little salt to your sauerkraut to help it last longer. Uh, those are some natural options in the preservative world that does not mess with our digestion. In fact, those kinds of foods are actually, especially when you're talking about salt preserved meats and sauerkrauts and things like that, relatively healthy. Those are healthy foods, or at least I would consider them to be healthy foods. So there are some options on the artificial preservatives. Um, and then wrapping up the big four, artificial sweeteners. So in the artificial sweetener world, there's pretty much six primary artificial sweeteners. And pretty much every one of those, again, is non-controversial, really. Only in the US are we really even allowed to use those. Most of those are banned in a lot of other countries. Um, we're talking about things like aspartame and all the crazy artificial type stuff, saccharin, sucralose, um, neotame, advantame, all those types of artificial um, sweeteners. Um, and the crazy thing is, most people eat those sweeteners to for weight loss, and they wonder how come it doesn't really work. Well, it doesn't work because the the artificial sweetener that you're using um, causes metabolic disorders. So in other words, you're not going to be able to digest your metabolism is not going to be able to metabolize your food properly. Um, the stronger metabolism you have, the less inclined you are to obesity. The slower metabolism that you have, the more you're inclined that way. And those artificial sweeteners, most of them, especially things like aspartame, absolutely just destroy the metabolism. And then we wonder how come, even though somebody's eating only a couple thousand calories a day, they're still gaining weight. Well, it's the metabolism has to be jump started again, and that's not a super easy thing to do. So let's stay away. Hey, Stay away from that stuff. Azure has banned those for many, many years. Now, there are a couple of non-caloric um, sweeteners that come from natural sources, and Azure does allow those. Um, I can't say that I'm a huge fan of them in a general sense, but I think there's definitely a place for them. And now we're talking about things like alcohol sugars, um, which would be things like xylitol, and stevia and monk fruit. Now, stevia and monk fruit are both naturally occurring. Those are plants that have the way that the plant is set up, they have a flavor profile that makes the taste buds think that they're getting sweet when they're really not. And, we grow stevia in the Ellie's Eden starts. And it's always fun to eat the actual raw stevia leaf, and it doesn't, but it has a sweet taste to it. Um, Even though there's no sugar in it really at all. I mean, there's sugar in a very minute sense, but the sweet taste is not coming from any kind of sugars. And the same with monk fruit. So those two, um, yes, some of the stevia is over refined. I'm not a real fan of the refinement that sometimes takes place, but stevia itself, I think, and monk fruit as well, I think are both very healthy products and can be used um, in, if we're really trying to decrease our sugar content. Um, but I'm a lot more of a fan. If we're gonna have some sweets, have real things that are really sweet, like fruit, or even sweeteners like honey or maple syrup that are naturally occurring in nature. Um, but the but if we want to have 0 calorie type sweeteners, there are a couple of options that are very much naturally occurring that are not a part of this artificial sweetener world. So um, anyway, that's kind of the big four. And I haven't in the past, I haven't really talked about those all that terribly much because it's something that You know, when I was a kid and my parents changed our diet because of my health crises, these were all the things that they stopped using as a part of of diet change. Artificial, all these artificial things, and they used to say anything that you don't know what it is a plant that's on the label. Don't don't use it. Okay. Well, that's maybe an oversimplified way to look at it, but there is a lot of wisdom to that. Hey,
Yes.
if it's some long, complicated name, if it's in your food, probably not food you want to eat.
Well, and David, that's funny that you say that because one of the, or not funny so much, but I know one of the things we do when we're in our new product meetings, you're in the meeting, I'm there, and several other of our team members, along with our buyers. And there's been times when we've been looking at labels, and I know that we are Googling, like, what is that particular word? Because it's just something we haven't seen before, is that, and maybe sometimes it's just some botanical name or, uh, varietal name that we just weren't familiar with of something that is a food that we would eat, of a plant or such. But I know sometimes we are just pulling those up looking because we're scrutinizing every single ingredient that's on that label. And it's fun in a way to learn, new words and what things are, but to also it's concerning when you find that things are being buried under terms that people just don't understand. And so you look at it, and so I know that we always say if we can read it and it's a common word that makes sense, then it's usually pretty, you know, like sugar or um, apple or something like that. we know that we're
Well,
okay with that, right?
you're right. And some of these companies will do, they'll do weird things like, they'll write Salvia rosmarinus. Well, why don't they just say rosemary?
Right.
Come on. It's the Latin name for rosemary. Okay. Does everybody know that? Yeah, probably not. I happen to know that one. I happen to know a few, quite a few of them, but still, it's just silly. We really should try to simplify our labels as much as we can. And anything, at Azure, you'll find we don't usually go there. We're not going to go to the, some kind of a Latin name to make you think it's some kind of mysterious new happy ingredient. Hey,
Right.
I'm rosemary's good. I'm happy with rosemary.
That's
It
right.
works just fine for me.
Make it simple for sure.
I think it helps a lot having those kinds of things very clear.
Absolutely.
But you're right. Some companies they get this idea that if it can sound long and mysterious, that it's probably some kind of a superfood from the ancient world or some
Right.
crazy thing. And or they'll use the Latin name or they'll use the Inca name or something. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, David, we really appreciate, as always, your time going through various topics with us so that we can be educated. We need to be educated about what we're putting in and on our bodies, and so we greatly appreciate the time that you've given us today.
All right. Well, thank you everybody. And this is, you know, one last parting thought. If we look at these ingredients, these are some of the main things in addition to the farm chemicals and the other stuff that's happened. But I know if we live our lives without these, we're going to create a much healthier family, much healthier life for ourselves and our families. And you look at the world in around us, and we have gotten all these new diseases. Well, not new diseases, but extreme increase in occurrences of these diseases. In my childhood, autism happened once in about every 500 um, births or children. Now it's one in every 34. That is a huge testament to what these things do. And it's a combination of these chemicals, of the farm chemicals that are being used, um, probably some of the chemicals that are used in medications and vaccinations and those kinds of things as well. I think there's a big, it becomes kind of a toxic sludge. And these occur, and that's just one disease. How many, we're having, like I mentioned earlier, children with fatty liver, with cancers, children with cancers, even 50, 60 years ago, that was almost unknown. Today, there's children's hospitals full of it. These are things that don't need to be. We can, yes, from a big standpoint, maybe we should lobby the government to ban them or something. But right now, what we can do for our families is just not use them. And it's worked in my family. You know, we've, had none of those kinds of diseases or even ailments of any sort, really, that aren't just simply dealt with home remedies because we've not been using these chemicals the entire time that we raised our family. And Azure wants to give everyone the opportunity to do that. That's why we are so picky about the products that we sell and the ingredients that go into those products. We're extra picky about that because we want everyone to be able to make that choice. You can choose not to have those things in your life. And I would highly encourage, I'll tell you, it is so much easier and so much cheaper and so much less pain to live a healthy life than to have to than to be sick and have to medicate for it, or even if you're medicating in natural ways, let's stay healthy. The less of this toxic soup that we can have, the more healthy we're going to be. And that's what really gets me up every morning, is that we can make a difference in giving families the choice to live a healthy lifestyle, eat healthy food, and reap the results of a healthy family.
Thank you, David.